Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend full of time with family, to yourself, getting outside and getting fresh air, virtually with friends, and of course, homemade haircuts. So last week we looked at Hitler's 3 mistakes. But this week we're going to look at more Canada's involvement in the Second World War. And you cannot talk about the Second World War and Canada without talking about two major battles. The first, August of 1942, Dieppe in northern France, and the second, December 1943, in a place called Ortona, Italy. The Russians are now occupied in the east with Hitler and starting to push them back. And of course, where did we come through? We came up with the Americans and the British up through North Africa, through Sicily, and into Italy. We also wanted to test the waters, so to speak, in invading northern France. So the first Dieppe, which is in northern France, was unfortunately an absolute disaster. A lot of people, it's a very controversial battle because, of course, the Canadians, and it was mostly Canadians, landed on the beaches, and they were gunned down and they were slaughtered by the Germans, who were entrenched and many believe were completely ready for the Canadians coming ashore in this coastal town of northern France, not very far actually from Dunkirk. Why did it fail so badly? Well, when they came ashore, they hit rocks like this, and they were full of the beach. Now, this is kind of a jagged rock. I couldn't find a polished one, but imagine about this size, completely polished by the ocean waves. Think about running with a full pack on those rocks. It'd be very, very hard to get a foothold. Also, the Germans were up in the cliffs, and they, as I said, were ready for them, and it was a slaughter. Of the 6,086 troops, Canadian troops that landed on the beaches of Dieppe in August of 1942, over 3,623 men were killed. So you can see it is a very dark period in Canadian history. However, many of the men fought there said we did it for a reason, and I think most people agree that the lessons that they learned at Dieppe would carry through to the next invasion, and the big invasion we're going to learn about next, which is called D-Day. One of the heroes of Dieppe was John Muir Foote. He was a minister who selflessly and bravely ministered to the dead and dying on the beaches of Dieppe. He would receive the Victoria Cross, and in fact, our armories in downtown Hamilton on James Street are named after this amazing hero. So there is some controversy, not only because it was a slaughter and did the Germans know that we were coming, but there's also a second controversy about the nature of it. Was it really an invasion or was it a diversion? You see, there is a school of thought that says that the Canadians were actually used as a diversion. Why? Because the real object of Dieppe was to get a small, about this big, machine called an Enigma machine. And this Enigma machine was a code-making machine that the Germans used, and we couldn't break it. It was impossible. So the Allies really wanted a copy of these new machines, and one was thought to be at Dieppe. One of the people in charge of this covert operation, his name was Ian Fleming, and he will go on to be very famous because he will write the James Bond novels. Although they did not find the Enigma machine at Dieppe, the British were enabled to secure one and send it to their new code-breaking headquarters just north of London in a beautiful old manor house called Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park was the center of all code-breaking and the site of the first supercomputer. This computer, the world's first, was designed by a man called Alan Turing. And Alan Turing and his team broke the Enigma code. One of the major people in this team was a man named William Tutt. He would go on to work at the University of Waterloo. 70% of the people that worked at Bletchley Park were in fact women. Women mathematicians and code breakers were essential to this war effort. One of these women was Margaret Cooper. Margaret Cooper moved to Carlisle after the war. Now, unfortunately, a couple of years she passed away, but she was never able to talk about it, and only recently has her story come to light. She was a fascinating woman. Alan Turing and his supercomputer cracked the Enigma code, and some people say shortened the war by 1.5 years, saving millions of lives. If you are interested in this area of history, make sure you check out The Imitation Game. It's on Netflix, and it's an excellent film. So Alan Turing is a hero. He cracked the Enigma code. He's the author of the inventor of the world's first computer. However, after the war, things did not go so well for him. And if you watch Imitation Game, you'll see that after the war, he is in fact investigated. He is a homosexual, so he is investigated in England at the time. It's illegal. So he is facing jail time, and he has a choice between spending time in jail or getting hormonal therapy. He chooses the hormonal therapy, which does bad things to his system. And unfortunately and tragically, this hero of World War II commits suicide. They find him dead, and beside him on his bedside table is an apple, a poisoned apple with a bite out of it. Interestingly enough, to this day, Apple Computers uses this as their logo. Now, the next battle that Canada was involved in, and again, the Canadians sustained heavy casualties. A lot of people call it Canada's Stalingrad because it was some very fierce fighting in a very urban setting. So Ortona is on the coast. It's a coastal town in central Italy. And as the Canadians were coming, they didn't realize that a very strong and very battle-worn German army was waiting for them at a place called Ortona. The Canadians, when they got there, they had a problem on their hands because the Germans were in every apartment, they were in every house. They also had snipers in the town that were locked on the streets, so it was very hard for the Canadians to move through the streets. So what do? Now, they didn't invent this type of warfare, but they certainly were the first to really use it effectively. And this is called mouse holing. And just like the rolling barrage in Vimy Ridge, Canadians really show their skill in this battle because they use this mouse hole. What is mouse holing? Well, it's just kind of exactly how it sounds. They take anti-tank mines or some sort of explosive device, put it on the wall, blow the entire wall out, go through the hole, first of all throwing a grenade through the hole, clearing the room or the stairwell, and going room to room, apartment to apartment. Can you imagine? Clearing out where the Germans were hiding. And it really was a very costly battle, but a very decisive battle. And that is in December of 1943. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. Make sure you watch the YouTube videos that I'm going to include with this. And our next topic will be D-Day. So study hard, don't panic, get out for some sunshine today, and be well.